Hayden Wesneski is so now we're kind of talking about the pitchers that have kind of taken a turn for the worse.
1-2. Swinging a drive toward right center. Back goes Robert. Back near the stands. That ball is gone. A game-winning home run for Chris Morel. Can you believe it? Listen to this crowd.
Welcome back to the Brotherly Cubs podcast. I'm Zach, and this is my brother John. We are your brothers who love everything Cubs baseball. If you enjoy talking about the Cubs, then hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and join us every week as we dive into the power, the speed, and the best team in the National League. We like to start off each podcast with a playful question for all 47 of our subscribers. Feel free to put your answer in the comments. Today, John, I ask you, what was in Bellinger's head at the press conference as he sat right in the middle in between Cubs GM Jed Hoyer and his agent Scott Boras?
So I can kind of relate to this in terms of as a teacher because we have meetings with kids every now and then about their grades or their behavior. And so you'll see the kids sitting there with mom on their right side, dad on their left side, or vice versa. And so they're just kind of, hanging their head and like it's not a good meeting. So I was kind of imagining that, looking at this press conference, like, Cody maybe thinking, oh, please don't find that weed. Please don't find that weed. Like, or asking, or thinking about the questions that are coming up. And, it was just kind of awkward. I think, I think I've heard it from a couple of different podcasts now, CHGO and I think Locked On mentioned it as well, that having Boras there, Scott Boras, at a press conference that he probably doesn't even need to be at,
Yeah.
was just kind of weird. Some people are saying that it's kind of like showing, hey, I'm supporting my clients. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. And, I show up for my guys kind of thing. But
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? What do you think,
He's either
Cody?
thinking about the last wave he hit back in LA, or he's thinking about like his golf swing because he's in Arizona where all the golfers are. Uh,
Yeah.
or some other illegal substances that are illegal in Arizona or Texas, but legal in Illinois, um, or legal in California. Yeah, Cody Bellinger looks like, for lack of a better word, he looks like a person who does the green stuff. For our listeners who aren't engaged in that, we're talking about marijuana. No, but I think the posture is extremely weird with your agent right there and the GM, only because this is such a drawn out negotiation. This thing isn't happening in December. It's happening like at the start of spring training or even right in the middle of spring. So yeah, it's he's thinking about something else. I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah.
you heard about Craig Counsell talking with Scott Boras directly, like, hey, joked like, hey, I thought you were gonna bring Montgomery with you too. So
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Then that's all I could research was just Jordan Montgomery come to the Cubs. Is that gonna happen?
yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't
yeah,
think it's gonna happen. The Cubs are like $4 million or 3 million, less than 5 million away from the first luxury tax threshold, which apparently to Scott Boras is 9/11. If you get over that threshold, so he's already experienced one 9/11, which I think was in 2017 or 2018. I can't remember what year. But they went over the luxury tax and he paid probably $5 million, which to him is $17 billion. So going
yeah,
over the threshold has no major consequences unless you go way over, or if you go like 3 years over in a row. So I wish they could just go for it because I thought about this earlier today, and my new hot take of the year is they get Montgomery this year. That's their best chance of competing next year's market, because
mm,
next year's market is going to have all kinds of clarifications for TV deals. So those are all getting sorted out this year. And next year, all those teams that normally spend, like the Mets and the Phillies and the Padres, they're going
mm,
to go crazy because they're going to have their TV deals situated. So the Cubs already have Marquee as the sports network that has broadcasting rights. So they already have their TV deal figured out. So the Cubs have a little bit more cost stability compared to these other teams for this year. So going into next year, if those teams get those deals situated on a longer term basis, the Cubs
Mhm.
are not going to be, one of the spendier teams, almost as they were this year. Oddly enough, they were one of the spendier teams, which helped them get Bellinger. So this is their opportunity to go and get multiple high-priced free agents, especially on if Montgomery comes on a Bellinger-like deal. And for our audience, we talked about the Bellinger deal this last weekend. The deal was reported on, I believe, Saturday night into Sunday morning, and Cody Bellinger officially signed on Wednesday. So we have some, sort of around the league type news for the Cubs in particular. The Cubs traded left-handed pitcher Bailey Horn, who was on the 40-man roster, true bullpen arm. They traded him to the White Sox for right-handed pitcher Matt Thompson, who was formerly a starter in the minors. Suspect he's going to go into the bullpen to try and rein in his command. And that will give them, I think, their third Thompson in their organization. They have Keegan Thompson, Riley Thompson, now Matt Thompson. This move freed up a 40-man roster spot to sign Bellinger. They had a full 40-man roster. They had to relinquish someone from it. A couple other quick notes. The Cubs also acquired Garrett Cooper as a non-roster invitee. I believe he was formerly of the Marlins and a couple other teams. He was is a solid right-handed bat, first base player that could platoon with a lefty such as Michael Busch. This is kind of interesting as Patrick Wisdom was going to be one of the guys we talk about, and he will be one of the guys we talk about, but now Wisdom's spot as a platoon bench bat just got a little bit more complicated with Garrett Cooper in the fold. The Cubs also, before they got Bellinger, they signed Dom Smith and David Peralta to minor league deals, both left-handed bats. Both are recovering from injuries. David Peralta is a true outfielder, corner outfielder type bat who had dealt with an injury, had a solid above average bat, and dealt with an injury and then proceeded to be awful, in which that's why he's signing a minor league deal. Dom Smith did not put up great numbers last year, but they will all be in competition for bench bats. They would need 40-man roster spots to be acquired on the 26-man roster to start the season. I'm assuming some of those guys have opt-outs in their deals. This is commonplace. They either get an opt-out at the end of spring training if they don't make the team, or early on, let's say in April or May, if they're in Iowa AAA and they do not make the 40-man roster, they can simply opt out for a better position elsewhere. So the Cubs now have a cluster of options for bats. And since the Cubs signed Bellinger and they have Michael Busch from that trade, we assume the roster is set, but for the bench, it's a little bit less clear. Wisdom figures to factor into that. Garrett Cooper is his direct comparison as uh, I guess I'm trying to remember if it was Carter Hawkins or Craig Counsell. One of the two mentioned pretty recently that Michael Busch would start every day against righties
Mhm.
and a lot less against lefties. So there's definitely an opportunity for a right-handed bat as a first baseman. So we'll see how that works out. I don't think it sounds like Dom Smith is sooner to come back from what I read. He should be coming back in maybe a few days or a week. And David Peralta will not be back until apparently March 10th at the soonest. That's just a rough timeline, but that only gives him maybe 2 weeks or so before the end of spring. So he has a lot less time to make an impact. Um, John, any thoughts on the trade for Bailey Horn or any of these other non-roster invitees? Any thoughts on some of those minor moves we made recently?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a head scratcher as far as Garrett Cooper. I mean, it was down to, I think he said the Red Sox and the Cubs.
Mhm.
Um, he's a former All-Star, first baseman. So you kind of wonder again what that spells for Mervis.
For sure.
Uh, I mean, yeah, Mervis was, he's seen some action in spring training recently. I think he had a hit the other day. Was it today? He was
Yeah,
today. Yeah,
last couple. Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
So I mean, it's good to see him out there. But yeah, I mean, then of course, Bailey Horn. We had to free up a 40-man roster spot for Cody Bellinger too. So it was like Someone had to go. So I mean, he was kind of the odd man out. I really was actually looking forward to seeing him pitch. I know that you were pretty high on Bailey Horn as well, right?
Yeah,
So
I think he has decent stuff.
yeah, so I mean, um, it does suck. But I mean, there's going to be a lot of impact talent, I think, and um, as far as the other two signings, Dom Smith, David Peralta, um, both, like you said, both left-handed hitters. It's unfortunate right now that they're injured. And then you had mentioned obviously Pat Wisdom. He has quad tightness from the last game.
Yeah, he got scratched this game, and there was a little bit of on social media, there was a question of did he get traded type deal? Because there's that Garrett Cooper deal going on, right?
Right.
Just scratched quad tightness. Mervis came in and Pablo Aliendo went to play first. And Mervis, or sorry, let me rephrase that. Mervis plays first in this game at the time of recording, which is a Thursday, and probably Aliendo went to DH. So they scratched him out, and uh, it is what it is. I'm hoping he gets back healthy, but if he struggles with an injury here, this might be, I won't say it's the end of his Cubs career, and I think he does have an option left. We
Hmm.
can investigate all that stuff later when we look at Fangraphs has a really cool graphic called Roster Resource, which tells you which guys are out of options. So for a guy like Wisdom, he might be able to benefit from if he has an option from going back to AAA if Garrett Cooper shines, but we need to see some of these guys play. The
Right.
injuries, Wisdom, small samples still. So there's still a lot of opportunities for guys as we're only a week into camp, but now there's like five guys vying for one spot almost. It's kind of
Yeah,
insane.
it is insane. I mean, it's spring training. Spring training is basically, I mean, it's to get your reps in, obviously, but it's also served as a tryout tool. And
Right.
kind of the seeing eye test, and seeing how many different there's quite a bit of first basemen that you're going to see throughout spring training, right? I mean, you got Mervis, there's Michael Bush, there's
I mean,
now
Bellinger's a first baseman.
Garrett, yeah, Bellinger. Not that Bellinger needs to try out, but uh,
Right,
Garrett
right, right.
Cooper. So I mean, the list, of course, Patrick Wisdom, but I mean, there's just quite a list of options at first base,
Yeah.
um, which is good. I mean, like we've said this before, even if all of them happen to rake, during spring training, I'm not sure how much stock is really going to be put into that for other teams. But I mean, if they're looking at that, you could possibly swing a trade down the line for, Tanner Scott or someone like that. So, which I think they still need a lefty impact pitcher and the bullpen.
Mhm.
Um, we'll talk more about as far as lefties go, for people like Drew Smyly. And
Yeah.
so he's in the bull, or he was slated to be in the bullpen. I'm not sure entirely um, what Craig Counsell has in store for him, what his plans are. I've heard people talk about different podcasts are mentioning, throwing Smyly back into the fold as far as a starting pitcher, which I'm not sure I'd be sold on that, especially his recent outing. But
Yeah. So interesting you mentioned that. So uh we've got some options here. We've got 15 first basemen on the Cubs roster, all vying for one spot. But the Cubs did okay this week. They went 3-3. They had one tie. That tie came on a comeback when they were down 6-0. They tied the game at 6-6. So it's been kind of fun watching some of the youngsters play for the Cubs in spring training. I know you said that's where you get the opportunity for them. It used to be the September call-ups, but definitely in spring training, you see them. You might see half the lineup with regulars and half with youngsters. Other times you might see the minor leaguers generate, 7 out of the 9. Definitely after there's 2 or 3 at bats, you'll notice that every single starter in a particular lineup gets pulled. Now that'll happen a lot less as we get further on into spring, as we get into March Madness, college basketball
right,
coming up. You're going to see at the end of March, that last week, you're going to see a lot less of guys getting pulled, only maybe for certain matchups or if we want to investigate into a particular player. But as we've gotten an incredibly small sample, we love to overreact on small samples. So let's talk about the first week as we get into the hitting statistics of our Cubs. Chris Morel, who is vying for every day playing at third, either between DH or third. I think he has a spot, but interesting to watch him play defense. 375 average so far on 8 at-bats, a homer and 2 ribbies, of course, an OPS over 1, over 1,000. Caissie, a 625 average on 8 at-bats, 1,600 OPS, 2 ribbies, no bombs yet. PCA 308. On 13 at-bats, he has a ribby and he has 2 stolen bases. Brennan Davis actually looked really good so far. 429 average on 7 at-bats, but good hard contact. He has a homer, 3 RBIs. He was just hit with a pitch on Tuesday of this week. So he was diagnosed with a concussion per Counsell. It's a mild concussion. So the guess per Andy Martinez of Marquee is that he might be back in a few days or within a week. It's hard to say with concussion. Might need to give him a couple weeks. It just depends on how severe it is. And then in terms of our camp battles, Nick Madrigal is batting 286 on 7 at-bats, 873 OPS. Wisdom, the hot topic of our conversation already, only 8 at-bats, 375 OPS. Again, for our listeners, small sample. We're not taking this completely seriously yet with a grain of salt, but we will update this every week. And if we see anything insane, it will be on Twitter or X, whatever you call it. It will be a topic of conversation. Matt Mervis, our first base candidate to start at or DH at some point this year, 200 average on only 10 at-bats, a 667 OPS, no homers. And Alexander Canario, Assad, 182 average on 11 at-bats. I think he has also really low OPS. So small sample here, but you want to see guys like Mervis, Canario, and Wisdom hit a lot better. Canario did throw out a runner at the plate, so that was interesting. I believe Jordan Wicks was pitching the other day, and he did give up some contact, but Canario did throw a runner out at the plate, so that was awesome to see. The runner, I believe it was Garrett Mitchell, the Brewers did mow down the catcher. So they made a collision at the plate.
I was thinking like, man, that sucks to take a hit like that in spring training.
Dude, it's spring. It's the first week of spring. Why are you going to do that? And he's fast too. So Canario's got a weapon of an arm.
Yeah.
The biggest from the youngsters so far, my biggest takeaway is that our outfielders are incredibly athletic. We saw a little bit of Alcantara. Didn't have his numbers up because he's going to start at Double-A. Canario threw runner out. PCA is a good defender. Alcantara is seen as a good defender. Caissie has a really good arm, and was playing right. He played right in the first game, and he also has played in left field, taking over for Ian Happ a couple times, especially now that Brendan Davis is out with concussion. Caissie's going to garner a ton of at-bats. He's going to be a Triple-A to start the year, but he also is taking some reps at first. So this is a guy that will be your first base / DH / corner outfielder. So I really love that role for Caissie. It's a prototypical lefty power hitter type role, and he's got a good arm. So my biggest takeaway is that these guys look ready to play in terms of just pure athleticism. They're making good plays on the field defensively. So that's what you like to see from your outfielders. And I do believe that puts Brendan Davis behind. If he can't get back to his defensive form that we saw a couple years ago, there's lots of other guys that can take his place. Any notes on the pitching from your side, John?
Yeah, so you mentioned that Milwaukee game. Caleb Killian came in through 2 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 1 earned run, 2 strikeouts. Overall, his numbers are 4 innings pitched, 2.25 ERA, 3 hits, and 4K. So really like what we see from Caleb Killian. I know in the past that you were pretty high on Killian, and then I think he had debuted, or he came out for a little bit and didn't quite exactly impress.
Yep.
Yeah, and you're just like, yep. Jordan Wicks is pretty impressive so far. I mean, he has given up 6 hits, but 0 walks, 3 Ks, 1.93 ERA. And so really happy to see him start off strong. Again, we're kind of taking these, first few innings our first few games really with a grain of salt. So we just want to keep seeing that. Great stuff from Jordan Wicks. I'm hoping he can crack the rotation as the 5th starter. I like him over Javier Assad, and I like Assad, and really Assad has succeeded in almost anything that the Cubs have asked him to do. So I don't think that him going down to the bullpen would be, or in a long relief role would be really detrimental to him. But anyways,
Yeah.
that's a topic for another day. But
Well, yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I just want to comment on that. I don't think the starter out of spring training, the fifth spot, is going to be some kind of set in stone thing that gets nailed to Counsell's wall that he can't move these guys around. Assad pitched even better than Stroman did down the stretch. And that was a
yeah,
hot topic of conversation that Ross really failed at was when Stroman came back. He was rushed back into a starter position even before he's fully healthy, and Assad was dealing. So Assad went back to the bullpen. Assad can pitch. If he gets starter innings this year, even I guess you could say spot starts or bullpen type games where you just go as long as you can until he starts to run into a little bit of trouble. Assad and Wicks are both good pitchers, which is a really good luxury to have. This isn't the same um, camp battle as last year when it was Wesneski versus Sampson, neither of which I'm very confident. I don't know where Adrian Sampson is, but he's not. I don't think he's in the United States of America. Uh,
I thought he
but
went to, I don't know, was it the Orioles or no? Was it the Orioles? Oh no, I'm thinking of a different pitcher. Never mind.
I'll
Keep
look
going.
that up. I'll look
Yeah.
that up because I'm intrigued to see where he is.
Tampa, I think.
Oh, I
Is it?
guess they traded him, huh?
I don't know. He has a Tampa Bay Rays hat on right now, but
Hey, he did stay stateside. I wasn't sure exactly how that worked out for him if he left or he stayed around.
well, he has 2 innings pitched in 2024 with Texas. So
Oh, okay. So he got traded and he did not make an appearance with them last year. That makes a lot of sense with the Rays. So now he's spring training with the Rangers. Got it.
I think they gave him the wrong hat. They gave him a Tampa Bay Rays hat, but I don't see a Tampa on here at all.
Well, he was traded. I guess he was traded to the Rays. And I forgot who we got in return because that guy hasn't pitched much from what I remember.
Yeah.
So, or he was DFA'd. I can't remember how that worked, but yeah.
Yeah. Just moving on to the other pitchers. So Jose Cuas has done a pretty decent job. I mean, only, 2 innings pitched so far, but 0 earned runs and 4 Ks. Ben Brown today was a little bit kind of all over the place. He did strike out. I want to say it was three. He had 3 strikeouts. I think 2 walks.
Mhm.
So overall, he has he's pitched 4 innings, total of 4 Ks. So I'm really hoping for good things from him too. I'm not expecting a whole lot from him, but I'm hoping he can maybe make it into the bullpen and kind of have the same path that Justin Steele had as far as working him into the bullpen role and then eventually becoming a starter. Your thoughts on that, Zach?
Yeah, Ben Brown had injury issues last year with AAA, and when he got healthy, he struggled with walks. So his biggest thing is going to be, I guess, reining in some command next year at Iowa. And it'll be interesting if how I know last year they actually did bring him out of the bullpen at Iowa to a certain degree when he was getting back healthy to get his innings back. So I'm curious if they'll continue to start him. I think they will start him and just see if he can sort of max out like what they can do maxing him out starting games, but I think his path to the big leagues is in like a 1 to 2 inning role. um however they do that with the Cubs, that is, you're right, is the Steele and Keegan Thompson and Adbert Alzolay path to the big leagues. So I'm excited for that because he's another arm I kind of forgot about with the bullpen. but I think he's going to be pretty big. He's going to have a big role in the team. He's already on the 40-man roster. So they don't need to move anyone off to accommodate him. So that helps him quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, Hayden Wesneski is so now we're kind of talking about the pitchers that have kind of taken a turn for the worse. Wesneski, today was what one or not today, sorry, today was Smyly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Wesneski was I think the previous start.
Hmm.
So 1.1 innings pitched, 4 earned runs, 6 hits, 1 strikeout. Yeah, obviously the big thing with him is he just can't get lefties out.
Yeah.
Uh, and so that's kind of discouraging. But again, it's one start. You want to give these guys a chance to bounce back. If it becomes like 3 or 4 starts, where they're just not for some reason it's not clicking for them, that's going to be a little bit scary.
Hmm.
You at least want to see him bounce back. It's funny. I was listening to Greg Huss's podcast, and they were talking about how um, Brennan Davis rebounded pretty well this spring so far, and everyone's like, "Great, yay! Now we can trade him." Like, so I'm kind of hoping the same thing for Wisniewski. Like hopefully.
Yeah, for sure.
I just don't think I just don't think there's a spot in the rotation for him.
Oh,
So
no, not at all.
yeah, I don't know about the bullpen, maybe the bullpen, but I definitely not the rotation. So yeah, I just have not seen enough out of him the last couple years that, would show us otherwise. But
Hmm.
um so Drew Smyly, today 2 innings pitched, 7 hits, 5 earned runs, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. Obviously, he's integrating a slider and a splitter into his pitching arsenal.
Wow.
So
A
yeah,
slider too. I did not know that.
yeah, I think I was reading a slider, but definitely his splitter for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of, that's kind of to be expected. He said his fastball was hoppy. I'm not sure what that meant, but
Hmm.
so he said he was pleased with how his fastball was coming out though. So um not the best start again, but I don't see Smyly, you know, cracking the rotation. Obviously, I mean, he's another lefty. So, I mean,
Hmm.
that's problematic in itself. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, as a bullpen piece, obviously, I mean, we definitely need lefties, and he was in the bullpen last year, and I think he actually did a pretty good job switching from the rotation to the bullpen.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think he'll thrive in that type of role, as long as he can kind of get his new pitching repertoire honed in a little bit. Javier Assad, so he had 1.1 innings pitched so far, 2 earned runs, 3 hits, two walks, 0 strikeouts. So I mean, not the greatest outing, not terrible, but not the best. So Palencia kind of was um, not a great start either. So today he was zero point 0.2 innings pitched. He had 5 hits, 3 earned runs, 1 strikeout. Chris Clark had to bail him out. He got a double play, even though a run scored. And then he got the next batter. He retired the next batter. So um, he kind of got bailed out uh, from those batters there. So that's basically a roundup of the pitching uh, so far for the Cubs in spring training.
Yeah. Before we sign off here too, I know that we talked about Ben Brown, we talked about Wesneski, who he can't get lefties out. That's problematic if he's going to be in the role he was going to be in last year, which was a multi-inning type innings eater role. I think that might be better suited for Smyly and Assad. I'm wondering what they'll do with Wesneski. He does have options. So if he has a minor league option, they could send him back down and just work on that cutter, work on like getting the sinker away from lefties, getting in on the bat, getting away from the barrel on lefties. Because if he can figure out how to get lefties, he'll be a very valuable weapon. But if he can just get out righties with the slider, there's something there. But he's getting hit so hard that at this point, they might need to fine tune some of his stuff. Um, and Danny Palencia as well. Him having a rough outing. I want to see him recover, but also uh, you talked about Smyly working on stuff, so we take his results with a grain of salt. anytime guys are working on stuff in spring, the results can kind of vary. So we'll get more reports as we go on here about was Palencia working on something. I guess one minor positive to take away from his outing is he didn't have any walks. So Ben Brown had walks and stuff like that. Palencia needs to have that control to be a valuable pitcher.
And
So
he's always kind of been like that, right? I mean, a lot of gas, he throws extremely hard, but a lot of it boils down to control. Uh,
yeah.
just kind of going back real quick to Smyly. I think I had said slider. I thought I'd read about that earlier tonight, but maybe it was something else. But he's definitely working on a splitter and possibly a sweeper.
Oh, okay.
I
Sweeper
think that
slider.
sweeper slider,
Wow.
yeah. That'll kind of be a little bit more specific there. But yeah, so hopefully um he can kind of figure that out and Palencia can figure things out as well.
Yeah, there's still plenty of time for them to get it right. Obviously, we've got another few weeks before we start to wind down spring training. So
Yeah.
I'm pretty optimistic still that if someone's looking rough, like Palencia, for instance, they could just send him down, and then CJ Edwards could get a spot, or Ben Brown could theoretically, if he grabs control, quite literally gets better control of his pitches, he could control himself into a multi-inning or even a late inning spot because he can strike guys out. That's what you need in that position.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts as we wrap up this first week here in spring training?
No, I'm definitely looking forward to, tomorrow is March 1st. And so looking forward to counting down the days of spring training and eventually going to our game, right? Texas Rangers, Cubs at Texas.
Hmm.
Yeah. Definitely looking forward to that game and having a good time with you at the game. So that concludes our podcast for tonight. That's all we have time for. Thank you for joining us here on the Brotherly Cubs podcast. If you have thoughts on today's podcast, comment them below, or if you have another interesting topic, let us know. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and join the conversation with us on Twitter at Brotherly Cubs or Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I am John, and that is my brother Zach, and we will see you next week as we discuss more spring training games and maybe more signings to come for your Chicago Cubs.
Listen to this crowd.